Well, hello there. Welcome back to the channel. My name is James, and here at 20th and 21st Movies, we are about all things cinema. So this is another edition of my Criterion recommendations, where I'm going to recommend certain titles from the Criterion Collection based upon a particular genre. So in this video, I'm going to recommend those Criterion Collection editions for those of you who are interested in watching stories in New York. I personally love New York City. I love every time I visit. I love walking the streets of Manhattan. I love being in that city. And so for those of you who love New York, whether you live in New York, whether you love visiting New York City, here are some Criterion Collection editions about stories based in New York City that you may want to think about picking up. So let's get started. So I have here in front of me a stack of Criterion Collection editions, my New York City Criterion Collection editions, and here they are. Okay, so I'll start off with the 2019 film Marriage Story from Noah Baumbach, starring Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson. This is a film from 2019 that was released from Netflix and came out on the Criterion Collection in 2020. So this is a very interesting film that's based in New York City. I believe part of the time is also in California, but it's a New York City based film that you ought to take a look at, Marriage Story. The next film is a really interesting film that stars and is directed by Greta Gerwig, who is of course married to Noah Baumbach, and that is Frances Ha. This is a 2013 film, so it's a modern day film. It was actually filmed in black and white and has a really interesting visual style because of that. And I found this to be a really interesting watch, okay? Most of the time is in New York City. Of course, she has an excursion outside of New York City, but most of the time of this film is spent in New York City with this young lady's life. And I just found this film to be very fascinating and very interesting. Very nice take on life in New York City, Frances Ha. Next is a film that stars, of course, the legendary Robin Williams and Jeff Bridges. This is a Terry Gilliam film, The Fisher King. This is from 1991. It runs at 138 minutes. So this is a film that's, of course, based in New York City, and I highly recommend this one. It's called The Fisher King. All right, this next movie is a film from Spike Lee. So this is a Spike Lee joint, and this is a legendary film that literally requires no introduction. It's a film from 1989. It is one of Spike Lee's best films in my opinion, and that is Do the Right Thing. This film from 1989, directed by Spike Lee, stars Spike Lee and Danny Aiello. So this film covers life in New York City, in Brooklyn, in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of that borough at the height of summer. This film covers a multitude of themes. Of course, a big part of the themes of this film is race relations, and you see that in this film. This is a fantastic film in New York City that covers some pretty serious and heavy themes that were relevant back in 1989, and here we are 32 years later, those same themes are very relevant today as well. Do the Right Thing by Mr. Spike Lee, a Spike Lee joint. Check this one out. So this next movie is a film directed by Susan Seidelman, and it's called Smithereens. This is a 1982 film directed by Susan Seidelman and starring Susan Berman. And this is a really interesting character study of this young woman and her life in New York City in the early 1980s. And I highly recommend checking this one out. And it also has a pretty nice soundtrack to it as well. Smithereens. Check it out. Another film from New York City is a film directed by director Elaine May and stars Peter Falk and John Cassavetes, and it's called Mikey and Nicky. This covers life in New York City over one night. And it's a very nice, interesting portrayal of life in New York City over the course of this one night and these two characters. It's a very fascinating film that I highly recommend, starring two fantastic actors, John Cassavetes and Peter Falk. Mikey and Nicky, directed by Elaine May. Check it out. All right, so next is a film from 1971 from director Alan J. Pakula, and it stars Jane Fonda and Donald Sutherland, and it's called Klute. This is a really, really interesting film from Alan J. Pakula. I'm looking forward to his film, The Parallax View, that's coming out this year from Criterion. But this is the film Klute that came out in 2019 from Criterion. This is 114 minutes, and it stars Donald Sutherland and Jane Fonda. This is a really interesting investigation film starring Jane Fonda and Donald Sutherland, really at the top of their game in this movie. This is a fantastic release from Criterion. Of course, Jane Fonda won an Oscar for her role in this movie. And Donald Sutherland was fantastic in this film as well. This is a really, really great film from Alan J. Pakula that I highly recommend, Clute from 1971. Next is a film starring two legendary actors, Dustin Hoffman and Jon Voight, from the late 1960s and directed by John Schlesinger. This is the 1969 film Midnight Cowboy. So this is a really, really good film that has a pretty interesting and notorious reputation. Of course, I believe when this movie first came out, it was rated X when it first came out, and it made history as the first X-rated film to win the Best Picture at the Academy Awards. This is a really good film from John Schlesinger starring Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman, and I highly recommend it. It shows life in New York City, Midnight Cowboy. All right, two more to go. We got two classic films that I'm gonna cover here. The first is a film from the mid-1950s, and it is a film that I highly, highly recommend on this list, okay? This is a film starring Burt Lancaster and Tony Curtis in a wonderful special edition from Criterion, and it's called Sweet Smell of Success. This is from 1957. This is an absolutely phenomenal film. Film looks fantastic. The black and white photography looks phenomenal on this Blu-ray disc. The special features on this disc are amazing. Overall, this is a fantastic story from 1950s Manhattan that I highly recommend. If you have not seen this movie, definitely check this movie out. It's a fantastic performance by Tony Curtis and Burt Lancaster in this film, and it's just a fascinating, fascinating film overall. This is a digipack edition from Criterion, and you get a really, really nice digipack in this edition. Of course, on the inside, you've got yellow on the inside in the disc. And I really like that you have this nice thick booklet that shows essays from the film and pictures from the film. It's all in black and white. So I highly, highly recommend this edition from Criterion. This is a great digipack edition of a great film, Sweet Smell of Success from 1957, starring Burt Lancaster and Tony Curtis and directed by Alexander McKendrick. Highly, highly recommended. Pick this one up. Last but not least is a film from 1948 from legendary director Jules Dassin, and that is The Naked City. This is a film based in New York City. I had a chance to pick this up as part of the November Criterion Collection sale at Barnes & Noble, so I picked this up recently. I still have yet to see this movie, but the reviews that I have seen have all been very positive. And one of the themes that I pick up from those reviews is one of the biggest characters portrayed in this film is the city itself. It really highlights and showcases New York City and the whole organized crime scene in New York City. And I included it on this list because I know that this film highlights the Big Apple, highlights New York City in a really beautiful way based on the reviews that I've seen. And I'm looking forward to seeing that when I have a chance to watch this. So I recommend checking this one out based upon that. And I'll let you know more about what I think about it after I've had a chance to see it as well. So let's compare notes on this one. Okay, so there you have it. Those are my recommendations from the Criterion Collection for films that show life in New York City-based stories from the Criterion Collection. I think this is a really nice collection of films. It covers every decade from the 1940s all the way up to 2019. And in that, you really see the evolution of New York City over these past 70 plus years. So I think that's really interesting about these films. And I highly recommend all these titles. I'm personally looking forward to checking out this one. I've heard great things about this edition, The Naked City, so I'll be checking this one out soon and I'll let you know my thoughts on this one. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think about these films? Have you seen any of these films? What do you think about these movies? What do you think about the movies themselves? What do you think about how these films portray life in New York City? Let me know that in the comments below. And also let me know what other films you're interested in watching this year. What are the films that you're excited about seeing, either coming out from the Criterion Collection or films that are just coming out in general? I know I'm personally looking forward to watching A Quiet Place Part 2. The new Bond movie's coming out in a few months. The new Fast and Furious film, F9, is coming out soon. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the new Matrix movie. Really looking forward to seeing where they take that story from where it left off back in 2003 or 2005. So anyway, let me know what movies you're looking forward to seeing this year. Again, thanks for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time at the movies. Peace.